I read a book this month about a woman whose social media fantasy broke into her house wearing a mask, and somehow that wasn't even the most unhinged read I picked up in May. Hi, Elle, I'm Lizzie, and we need to talk about my reading month. I read 9 books, I DNF'd 5, and I found a few more author authors that I want to read more from. Okay, first up, Finlay Donovan Crosses the Line by Elle Cosimano. This series continues to be the most ludicrous in the best possible way. If you haven't read these books before, Finlay is a romantic suspense writer whose life keeps accidentally becoming a bit of a crime scene. So in this one, her nanny, Vero, is facing criminal charges for a theft of sorority funds when she was a student at the University of Maryland. And this is a crime that Vero says she didn't commit. However, in the last book, she was caught by police. She's been extradited to Maryland, and she's now on probation in her childhood home. So what happens? Of course, Vero and Finlay decide that they are going to solve this case. And so Finlay does what any woman does who has 2 small young children. She leaves them with her cop boyfriend, Nick, for the better part of a week. Does a real cop take a week off work to spend babysitting his girlfriend's small children while she commits felony adjacent behavior? Doubtful. It's ridiculous in the best possible way. So overall, these books are chaotic, funny, fast. They're a great palate cleanser, and I fly through them every time. So if you're needing a fun read, start with the first book. Finlay Donovan is killing it, and read the whole series. Next up is Swipe Bite by Alexandra Vasti. The book is not coming out until November 10th, but I was able to read an advanced reader copy. So this is paranormal mystery romance about a vampire corporate heiress named Sophronia Vega and a human software engineer, Casey Amato. Sophronia has designed a dating app called Stoker, which is supposed to match humans and vampires safely for hookups. However, things start to go wrong, people start dying. It's a sabotage situation, and Sophronia and Casey have to team up to solve the case and, of course, fall in love along the way. So Vasti normally writes historical romance. She's a best-selling author in that genre, and paranormal romance is a new genre for her. But you know what? Her banter is so good, I would follow her into any genre. And this one is no different. Did the blood make me a little bit queasy? Yes, I have a very weak stomach. And vampires are definitely not my usual thing, but the comedy landed completely for me. I loved Casey's grandma Lola. I loved some of the Pillbug software debugging team. They had me laughing out loud. So if you're a Vasti fan or just wanting something a little bit fun and different that bridges genres, this one is totally worth it. So put it on your pre-orders. Okay, the next book is Marriage of Inconvenience from Penny Reid. People have been telling me to read Penny Reid for years. I recently read and loved her Happily Ever Ninja. And so I decided to read Marriage of Inconvenience, which many people have said is like the fan favorite in her Knitting in the City series. So in this one, billionaire heiress Kat Turner needs to get married immediately or she is going to lose her family's company. So who does she pick? Of course, she picks her secret crush, Dan, the security man. So this has everything that readers love: friends to lovers, pining, forced proximity, marriage of convenience, a bit of a slow burn. And what I really liked is that because Kat has had some past trauma and she has some issues around sex, the physical side of the relationship has to move a little bit more slowly. If you haven't read Penny Reid, I highly recommend this book. It's super fun. So the next one is Erin Langton's Forever Your Rogue. This is a historical romance. The recommendation came from Reddit's Our Romance Books, and it did not disappoint. So it's Regency, a widowed single mom at risk of losing her kids to her late husband's awful relatives. Her solution is she's going to have a fake engagement with her best friend's brother, a certified rake named Nathaniel Travers. So you know where this one goes. He comes to her estate to pretend to be her fiance for the summer. What I didn't expect was how genuinely convincing Nate's character transformation is. So if you're into historical romance, this is a really good one to add to your TBR. Okay, next up is Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. So I have to preface this one by saying I am not a dark romance reader. Again, my stomach is weak. I really don't like a lot of scary or dark. I do not watch horror movies for obvious reasons. I would be sleeping with my lights on for weeks. However, this book was billed as a rom-com, similarly to Tourist Season by Bren Weaver. And I actually really liked that book. So I thought maybe. This one had been languishing on my TBR for the better part of a year. And so I said, I'm going to read it or I'm going to remove it. So here's the premise. ER nurse Allie has a thing for a masked man online. Josh is that masked man. He posts thirst traps anonymously for millions of fans on social media. Allie comments asking him to break into her house wearing the mask. He does. And they end up living out a lot of their dark fantasies. Meanwhile, Allie has a real stalker she doesn't know about. So, I know how this all sounds. The book has a ton of trigger warnings. Please read them before you pick it up. But I will say Nevessa Allen's tone is light enough that I actually enjoyed the read. This book was a massive book talk book, which I usually avoid these because I find out that they're not right for me. However, this one totally worked for me. So just read the trigger warnings first. I mean it. Next up is not a romance book. This is, I don't know how you pronounce it actually, Katabasis. So Katabasis by R.F. Kuang. This book has so many elements of things that I love. Dark academia, mythology, especially Greek mythology and the underworld, hell, rival graduate students who are magicians. And it does have this rivals to lovers romantic subplot, which I think really added to the book. I had DNF'd probably R.F. Kuang's biggest book, Yellowface. I was too close to the publishing world to read it as satire. I did put that one aside, but Katabasis hit really differently for me. It was a really fun read, very inventive. I will say in the third act, I did skim some pages when the two leads were separated for a time, because apparently in order to keep me focused, a book has to have romantic tension at all times. And now I do want to read her book, Babel. So that's also on my TBR list. So look for that one coming soon. American Fantasy by Emma Straub. This one somehow came from my library billed as a romance, but I would not call it a romance. It's a women's fiction. It's focused on a divorced woman, Annie, finding herself in midlife post-divorce. She ends up on a themed boy band cruise ship called the American Fantasy, along with 3,000 screaming fans of the boy band. These 5 middle-aged pop stars, many of whom are having their own midlife crisis. It's a fun book. It did take me a little bit to get into it. I think part of it was that the book is in 3 points of view. There's Annie, the woman with the midlife crisis. There is Keith, one of the boy band members, also having a midlife crisis. And there's Sarah, one of the women who runs the cruise, who is also kind of trying to figure out her next step. The book started with Sarah's POV. I personally found her point of view to be pretty extraneous for the whole book. I think we could have done without it. And because the book starts in her POV, it takes longer to get to Annie. And so I think it really slowed down the opening of the book. But I did stick with it. I did enjoy it. It's a solid pick if you enjoy stories about midlife reinvention and women's fiction. The next romance book I read is from one of my personal favorites, Katherine Center. Her latest book is The Shippers, and I got this on a Skip the Line loan from the Libby app through my library, which was a delightful surprise. So in this book, it's a friends to lovers. JoJo is trying to get closure on an old crush from her neighborhood at her sister's cruise ship wedding. She ropes in her best friend, Cooper, as her wingman. Cooper, who left her after college, moved to London without another word. So I think friends to lovers is a really hard trope to pull off. I do think Center does a good job with it. I mean, something has to happen to force the friends to see each other in a new light. So I did feel like this was a believable situation. I think what I didn't enjoy is that miscommunication is used as a plot device a lot in this book. And that is really a pet peeve of mine, when this whole thing could have been solved with a conversation. And because these two are friends, it's likely they would have had these conversations. So that to me wasn't my favorite. However, am I going to read the next Katherine Center? 100%. If you are new to Katherine Center, I would suggest starting with some of her other books like The Bodyguard or The Rom-Commers. Okay, let's talk about DNFs. And there were a lot of them this month, mostly because I am trying to get through my Libby TBR, so I'm being a bit more ruthless. It's, do I love the book? If not, move on. So, first up, The Paris Match by Kate Clayborn. I am sorry, tons of people love this book. It just didn't work for me, and here's why. I need a competent heroine, and even though Layla is a doctor, she really gives off this kind of victim vibe and energy that just did not work for me. Griff was framed as brooding, but really he came across as a bit of a jerk for me. He was shown early on to be a good friend to the groom, but he really didn't have a redeeming, tender moment with Layla early on where I could see how she might think that there was something deeper and under the surface with him. For me, the premise was very problematic. So essentially, Griff and Layla are working together to get the bride and groom back together when the very young bride has decided she wants to call off the wedding. And the groom is also a much older man. So to me, that was just icky, right? Like if the young bride doesn't want to get married or is questioning whether she should get married to this much older man, like give the girl a moment and let her figure it out. So All the Colors of the Dark, I think this was like, a book club pick for a lot of people. I just wasn't in the mood for it. It had a slow start. I wanted something easy and fun. I moved on. Then there was Leave Me Behind. Okay, this had been on my TBR list so long, I forgot why I added it. I seriously can't figure out why it even ended up on my list. It's dark romance. There's love triangles, BDSM. It was not for me for page 1, so I just deleted and moved on. Next up, Do I Know You by Wibberly and Siegman Broka. So I love the concept. A couple pretending to be strangers to prop up their stale marriage. It's a marriage redemption book. But in the early chapters, the dual POV had a lot of overlap, which made it drag. I did like the female main character, who's a voice actress. She seemed kind of fun, but I couldn't get into the male main character. He just seemed really buttoned up and stifling. And so then I came to The Odds of You by Kate Dramis. This was a book that I think has been pretty popular. It had a cute premise. A movie star meets an author at Comic-Con. People think that they're dating accidentally, which I thought was a cute setup. The hero, Theo, is a golden retriever, super sweet. But I just couldn't connect with the heroine, Sage, the author. She's drowning in this anxiety despite having a massive best-selling novel, potential movie deals, lots of success. Again, I need competent heroines. Like, even if they're messy, something about them has to show that they're competent. So, like, going back to Finlay Donovan, she's ridiculous, right? It's a lot of Ethel and Lucy slapstick. But at the end of the day, she's a good writer, she's a great mom, and she can solve a mystery, even if it's goofy along the way, right? There's still this air of competence. And I just wasn't getting it from the odds of you. So again, I set it aside because there are so many other books. So that was May, 9 reads, 5 DNFs, 1 vampire book I didn't hate. And currently I'm reading Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. If you know her work, the bar is really high. I started with Not Another Love Song, which is one of my all-time favorite contemporary romances. Cross your fingers for me that it works out. So if you've read any of these books, let me know in the comments what you thought, especially if you love the Paris match, because I want to understand what really appeals to people about this book. And I love the fact that we all have different reading habits and different reading loves and can have a conversation about it. So like and subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in June with another reading recap.